Hi, my name is Dan McLeod. I'm a master's student with the Center for Public Policy and Administration. Today I'm here because I was researching regulations governing UASs, which are unmanned aerial systems, the most recent regulations occurring in the U.S. at this point. Basically, a UAS is short for, as I mentioned, unmanned aerial system, and the system just includes everything, including the control station, the data links, telemetry, communications, all the components that are needed to operate an unmanned aircraft. They're also also known as UAVs, which is unmanned aerial vehicles, and also as drones. The term drone is a fairly loaded one, given the public perception, which is usually associated with the foreign policy use of drones, the military usage of drones. And as you can see here, there's a lot of controversy around the use. Some may say that they actually encourage or act as a recruiting tool for terrorists because of accidental civilian deaths in the Middle East. For the domestic use of drones, we actually we actually prefer the use of the name UAS or UAV because it's not quite as loaded. Let's see. Well, concerns about the rise of surveillance and police state have validity that I'll touch upon later. There are a host of more benign uses that can promote the public good here domestically with the use of UASs. Such applications include scientific research, search and rescue, filmmaking, photography, agricultural, monitoring infrastructure, border patrol, and such uses, commercial uses as delivery of packages and whatnot. The little thumbnail picture is just an example of what agricultural use might look like. UAS could be used to kind of monitor the health of one's crops, find out which ones needed watering and the like. So basically, just given the more day-to-day applications, when drone warfare, if it ever comes to home, it'll probably look more something like this. In 2012, Obama signed into law the FAA's Modernization and Reform Act of 2012. Basically, the main points were that it authorized the budget through 2015, it improved aviation safety, build capacity of the national airspace system, and provides a framework for introducing new technology into the airspace. This last point is the essential entry point of UAVs into the United States. It begins as a phased-in approach to integrating the UAVs into the national airspace system. And because the U.S. has the busiest, most complex airspace in the world, an incremental approach is seen as the best way to ensure safety and to resolve the logistical challenges posed to both the FAA and the aviation community. So basically, this is part of it. There's the rules were intended to be put into place, within 3 years. We're supposed to be set up by September 30th, 2015, this past fall. Things are going, unsurprisingly, slower than anticipated, just given the very reasons why I mentioned the complexity of the system and the problems that are needed to be tackled to ensure the best methods for safety. And the basic use of UASs are broken down into three categories. The first is civil, as also more commonly known as commercial, and commercial use is permitted on a case-by-case basis at this point, and it's fairly rare. In order to get permission, you need to obtain a certificate of waiver from the FAA before using it, and just ensure that you're no threat to the airspace, low-risk commercial operation in controlled environments, and for experimental purposes. Basically, a commercial use would include selling photos or videos taken from a UAS, using a UAS to provide contract services such as industrial equipment or inspection of infrastructure. Another section is the public, and basically these are UASs that are owned and or operated by federal, state, and municipal government. These are also pretty rare at this point. They're granted on a case-by-case basis as well. They require a certificate of authorization. And so far, the uses have been included federal and state agencies, law enforcement, public colleges, and universities. And the third area is for hobbyists. Basically, there's essentially no interference from the FAA with hobbyists, and these they must be flown within according to safety guidelines. The ones that are used are small UASs flown for recreational purposes and are typically known as model aircraft. They're for personal enjoyment and are operated within the safety guidelines. These are the basic guidelines that are available for the hobbyists. No aircraft fly heavier than 55 pounds. They must fly below 400 feet. The operators need to keep them within line of sight. They can't interfere with manned aircraft operations, must not fly within 5 miles in airport, and the operators vow not to be reckless with the UASs. So basically, we have public and private operations on a tight leash, and then for hobbyists, they are voluntarily following the hobbyist guidelines. And so where we are with that at this point, with the hobbyists, there's a lot more of the UASs being used in the hobbyist realm. And we see, if we kind of take stock of the various steps here, we see that we're flying over people in stadiums, having close encounters with commercial airliners, flying within 5 miles of airports. Pilot sightings of UASs have doubled since last year. Most happen at low altitudes, but some close encounters have happened at a cruising altitude of 10,000 feet, which is a little over the 400-foot limit. And needless to say, if one of these gets sucked into a turbine or hits the windshield of a commercial airliner, that's going to be a problem. And just given the sheer number that are hitting the market now, that's a real kind of concern out there that they're kind of wrestling with in terms of the safety issue. Also, being a little reckless with the drones. This was one that that crashed in the front yard of the White House at 3 a.m. one morning. And there's also the interference with other aircraft, too. This was a big problem with the record fires in California. They had to call off a couple missions, or a number of missions, because hobbyists were flying over, hoping to get some great pictures, which I'm sure they did, and they had plenty more opportunity because there's a lot more spread of the fire because of that. So basically, in response to all these issues, these kind of headline-making problems going on with the influx of UASs into the airspace, there has been a proposed registration for hobbyists. I just use this picture of Cartman. If you're familiar with South Park, there was an episode where they found a father's drone, and then mayhem ensued. But anyways. So basically, there's a 25-member registration task force. You see the points here. Basically, when you purchase a drone, their recommendation was to register online, have a unique number for the owner. You'd have to give them your name and address, be over 13 years old, and have that number be readily accessible. Basically, it's handy after something has occurred, unfortunately, so that if there's a crash or some sort of event, like at the U.S. Open where there's a crash, they could track down the owner. So basically, what lies ahead is this holiday season. There's expected to be about 500,000 sales expected just in the coming, up until the coming weeks. The FAA may release new rules for commercial use in 2016. That's something that we'll see if that happens. There's still some heavy-duty wrangling. They have to make some essential changes there, including relax the line of sight requirement in order, if Amazon or Google's to have delivery, they will have to be able to operate without, outside of line of sight. There needs to be pilot training certification for heavier UASs, and there's also talk about making sure that there's GPS geofencing to maintain basically limits on altitude and restricted areas. Get a little cutoff there, but that would be maybe a geofence around the White House. Actually, all around Washington, D.C., they're prohibited over arenas and other public areas. And we also have some more changes that will be needed in order to establish the broader public and commercial use of UASs. Basically, the questions that lie ahead are new privacy laws needed. How will traffic volume be regulated? Will we have UASs kind of clogging the skies? What will its impact be on wildlife, birds, even ground life? There's been a study that found that apparently UASs stress out bears in the wild. They don't look it, but by monitoring their heart rates and everything, they are not fans. Also, the question of whether or not this will be used for human transportation at some point. Oops. Anyways, I had a picture of Justice Sotomayor. She had expressed concerns, especially about the constitutional impacts of having UASs, and she particularly warned about the concern of establishing an Orwellian police state, and she actually used that language for that. The concern is that the implications for the Fourth Amendment from protection of search and seizure are a core concern. And so far, and the need to require a warrant for aerial surveillance is what a lot of states have passed laws to protect privacy. So at this point, 20 states have passed laws related to UAVs, and in some cases, in a lot of the cases, the state regulations are more powerful than the federal protections. So basically, there's going to be what lies ahead will potentially be a conflict between state and federal privacy protections. That may lead, if there's stronger protections at the state level, it might be challenged and reach the Supreme Court at some point. At this point, the Supreme Court ruled in 1989 that the police may use low-flying aircraft to gather info without a warrant or probable cause. And they said it was not a search within the meaning of the Fourth Amendment. Many people are thinking that the law has not quite caught up yet with the technology, because this basically gives free rein to surveillance use of UASs. And basically, some of the capacity there is something that to be concerned about, because the technology would allow UAVs to hack Wi-Fi. They can use scanning devices, infrared cameras, live feed video, heat sensors, radar, cameras to scan a whole city or read a milk carton from 60,000 feet. There's also the capacity to pose as fake cell towers in order to determine the location and intercept texts and phone calls. Homeland Security is implementing them and using them, and because of there's a high level of confidentiality, so there isn't a really good picture of the extent to the domestic use at this point. And that's worth keeping in mind, as we know, with the National Security Agency, where they're downloading 227 million text messages a day, that it is something to keep in mind in terms of balances, in terms of our constitutional rights, and the obvious benefits and public benefit of having commercial and public use of UAVs. And that's it for me.